Sam Bankman-Fried and I both wasted our inside information, but at least I tried. Here's what happened is we quickly relived the glory days. When I was a student athlete at USC, I showed up at the USC baseball field and shockingly saw my name in the starting lineup. I figured it was a typo. It was not. And I was starting that day against the Japanese national team who was in town. And not only was I starting, I got more good news when I learned we stole the signs from the other team. So we knew every pitch that was coming. So you'd think when I'd step into the batter's box, I would get a hit because I knew a slider was coming or a changeup. Instead, I went 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts. My friends and family were there, and they probably wondered, how the hell did he ever make this baseball team? And has he actually ever played baseball before? Well, Sam Bankman-Fried has had that inside information. He knows the fastball is coming, and like me, he's wasting that inside information and opportunity, and it's going to lead to a measurably longer federal prison sentence. In this video, I'm going to touch on this article that came out earlier today where Bankman-Fried's lawyers are asking for 63 to 78 months in prison. I'm going to go through it and offer some insights. Before I do, disclosure, our team is working with people in the FTX case, though not Sam Bankman-Fried, though the message that I would convey would be the same regardless. But I want to be honest and make that disclosure. Also, if you're new to the White Collar Advice channel, welcome. We're so grateful that you're here. To those who are immersed in the criminal justice system, quick note, we've created a new White Collar Advice app. It's free in the App Store. If you want great, new, relevant content every single day to help you prepare, download the app. If you don't download the app. And also, Lessons from Prison, my book that I wrote in prison, is finally up on Audible. It's there if you'd like to read the book. Now, Bankman-Fried is going down the path of so many before him and not learning from others who have traversed this journey, like Elizabeth Holmes, who outsourced the work to lawyers. R. Kelly, I know this triggers some people. R. Kelly's lawyers at his sentencing hearing articulated there were child abuse issues or trauma from his past. If true, it would have been more relevant if R. Kelly articulated that message. Even here in Southern California, Miss Grossman tragically killed 2 young children. She went to trial. Now she's looking at 34 years to life in prison. I presume, like Bankman-Fried, like Holmes, like R. Kelly, and like others who go to trial, they won't mitigate under the idea it will jeopardize their right to an appeal. So they're going to outsource the work to all of the lawyers. And I say that the inside information angle because federal judges, including judges we've interviewed on YouTube, continually convey defendants have an opportunity to mitigate and demonstrate why they're worthy of leniency, even if you have gone to trial. But as I will share with you in this article, Bankman-Fried is not taking the inside information and learning from others who have gone down this path. He's going down the same path as others, and I suspect that's why he's going to get absolutely filleted. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to go through a demonstration of how long he would actually serve on a 63-month sentence, which is what his lawyers are asking for. And to be fully transparent, it's going to upset some of you because with good time and potentially a year off for the drug program, the First Step Act that Trump passed in late 2018, many of you asked me if Trump is eligible for this law that he helped pass. That is a big no. Together with the time that he has served, he went in August 11th, as you may recall, the witness tampering. Judge Kaplan took him into custody, which is really hard to do, by the way. It's really hard to violate as a white-collar defendant and get taken into custody before sentencing. My company, White Collar Advice, has prepared thousands of defendants since 2009, and I can tell you only a few clients during this window have been taken into custody, which really gives you an idea of how Judge Kaplan feels about Bankman-Fried, and it further proves why his lawyers asking for 63 to 78 months is kind of an insult to other defendants who do the work, who do mitigate, who avoid problems, who demonstrate why they're worthy of leniency, and in some instances still get a guideline sentence. So if Bankman-Fried hasn't done any of that work, if his post-offense conduct is tragic, as evidenced by Kaplan taking him into custody, what has he done through his own efforts and words, even while in that detention center, to justify that he's worthy of a significant downward departure? The answer is probably nothing, though I know his lawyers are still paid to articulate and argue why. So I'll go through the calculations at the end. And also we have this free calculator on our websites for defendants traversing the system to give you an idea of how long you might serve on the inside. Now, jumping into this story, a lot of people are predicting he'll get 10 to 15 years in federal prison. I think that makes sense. His lawyers have argued in their memorandum that was 98 pages. The government has till March 15th to rebut it in advance of the sentencing on March 28th. Now, some of you might be cynical and say, Justin, you're about to talk about ways that Bankman-Fried should be mitigating and articulating through his own efforts why he's worthy of leniency. Maybe he's doing that. You're not psychic. You're referencing this article. All good points. I've been doing this for a very long time, and logic and experience tells me if Bankman-Fried had done some of the mitigating to convey to Judge Kaplan why he's worthy of a shorter sentence, or if he was productive inside of this prison and building a record demonstrating why he's worthy of leniency, some of it would have made its way into this letter. That much I can tell you. So I'm not telling you he's not going to write a letter or make a statement at sentencing that could be impactful. But if it were, and if you were really doing the work rather than relying on other people, some of that work would have been in here. I absolutely promise you, but oftentimes the message is wrong. Look at that interview that Elizabeth Holmes did with the New York Times. Like, there's a new event. Forget about Elizabeth Holmes. It's a new person. Who it is? Like, well, which was it? We believe this person, the Oprah. Which is it? Bad messaging. They shouldn't have put it out there. So I presume they said to him, Sam, let us handle it. Us is the lawyers who are paid a ton of money to articulate why he should get 63 months in prison, even though he's not worthy of it. His parents, who would do the same thing that my parents would do. Bankman-Fried didn't have bad intentions. There's no interest to send him to prison for any day. Parents are going to say what they're supposed to say, of course. And then, of course, there are experts like therapists who are talking about his autism and other mental health issues, all relevant. But guess what? People have been to 1,500 sentencing hearings since 2009, because when I came home from prison, had no money, no career, no job, nothing to do. I'd go with a PB&J, Diet Coke, and a Coca-Cola, and I'd go sit at sentencing hearings all day and listen to judges. And I used to tell myself, I have a treasure trove of content. I wonder if I will ever have clients someday to share it. Indeed, we do, and we share it. We give that information. They act. Bankman-Fried did not. So, of course, his lawyers are articulating that 63 to 78 months would be a just sentence. Now, the lawyers have a goal of ensuring that he gets 10 years or less, because at 10 years or less, he would go to a minimum security camp. And compared to what he's enduring right now in the detention center, the minimum security camp would feel like Disneyland. The low security prison would feel like Disneyland. Now, even if he gets more than 10 years, he can still go to a camp. Disclosure, our team worked with Todd and Julie Chrisley. Julie got 6 or 7 years. Todd got 12. Todd, despite getting 12 years, went to a minimum security camp in Pensacola. It is up to the Federal Bureau of Prisons in Grand Prairie, Texas, to do the designation, and they will rely on the pre-sentence report, the victims, the crime, the statements from the judge, and the judgment and commitment order in determining that ultimate designation. Though they know if he gets 10 years or less, he is most likely going to go to a minimum security camp and also get credit for the time served. He went in August. He gets sentenced in March. I only have a psychology degree here from USC, but back of the envelope, he has 230 days in custody. That's a good thing. Perhaps the only good things that's happened to him since August is he is finally getting credit for time served. Now, let's jump into some things that can be, let's not use euphemisms here, people, totally offensive. So when his lawyers argue or recommend that he should not be ordered to pay restitution or forfeit any assets, saying none of the assets identified for forfeiture were for Bankman-Fried's personal benefit. They argue that customers and creditors will receive a return on their funds through FTX's bankruptcy. Now, there's certainly some history of creditors and investors turned victims getting money back. We saw that with Bernie Madoff, who got 150 years with billions of dollars in restitution. I know Irving Picard, the creditor with whom I once spoke on stage in DC, made a lot of money. I think his law firm made hundreds of millions of dollars in money that came back, from the Madoff scheme. And a lot of that money, of course, went to victims. So they're arguing there should be no forfeiture or restitution. And part of the reason defendants get such lengthy sentences is the loss amount as it draws up the sentencing guidelines. It's part of the reason in the mortgage meltdown of 8, 9, 10, and 11, if you defrauded 40 banks and it's a $200 million restitution, if these banks were unable to cover the loans, it's the reason some people who pled guilty could have been looking at life in prison. The guidelines are so high. Indeed, that's part of the reason the probation officer recommended, now this is a big number, they recommended 100 years in federal prison. There's myriad reasons why. Of course, he didn't prepare properly for the probation interview. That much I can tell you. They're going to look at the loss amount, which can absolutely equate to life in prison when you're talking about billions of dollars in losses. Probation officers tend to be more conservative and, if anything, recommend a higher sentence than the person will actually get. In fact, it is a very good telltale sign when a probation officer recommends a sentence kind of like below the guidelines. That's a telltale sign to the prosecutor and judge that this person's worthy of leniency. Earlier today, a client in our community got sentenced to 8 months of home confinement. The probation officer recommended 8 months in prison, but the guidelines were like 24 to 30 months. So when you have the probation officer recommending something below, that's a really good sign that you're moving in the right direction. Of course, our client influenced the probation interview. I don't believe Bankman-Fried did for these bad choices and not mitigating, and probably, kind of sitting there saying very little because he fears if he says anything, it will jeopardize his right to an appeal. You, of course, have a probation officer who is going to come back and recommend 100 years in federal prison. So Bankman-Fried, not influencing the probation officer, gets convicted at trial, and he does what so many people do. They switch lawyers, and they might immediately go to a lawyer who produced an outcome, which is exactly what they want. So we went to high-profile lawyer Mark Mukasey, who had represented someone in the Southern District, which tends to come in lower. And if there was a district that comes in beneath the guidelines, the Southern District does it more than most. And frankly, you talk about inside information, I would tell you that Bankman-Fried drew a good judge, especially because of some of Judge Kaplan's comments on the sentencing guidelines and crypto cases, and how the guidelines and the loss amount could be so high, it could lead to a disproportionate sentence. So he had that inside fastball like I had. I swung and missed, at least I tried. Bankman-Fried took for granted this judge who has shown some willingness to depart with white-collar defendant. Now, as we continue on, it's fine to have autism experts write letters articulating why it's not in the interest of Bankman-Fried to go to prison for any day that is longer than necessary. The problem with this angle follows. He hasn't really demonstrated, and if he did, we would see some of that. He hasn't really demonstrated how the consequences of what he's been doing while in prison with autism or ADHD. He's not demonstrating or showing any remorse regarding his conduct. And in retrospect, he could have done some things differently. Even if he's going to appeal and not jeopardize his judicial rights, he has still made choices by getting taken into custody that bring him or elicit very little sympathy. And I suspect that's something that Judge Kaplan can say, right? So if you have an autism expert articulating he's struggling to get medication while in custody, and it's not in the interest of his health to be in custody, you then have a judge who could say, sure, if that was so vital to him, if that was so important to him, he wouldn't have witness tampered. He wouldn't have continued to make bad decisions. If it was that important to you, Bankman-Fried, you would have made just different choices. And we hear that a lot. We hear that a lot from judges who will hear from defendants. They're sorry. They didn't mean to do it. They missed their family. They didn't have bad intentions. Let them stay out and work to pay back victims. Prison's hard. First-time offender. They've done charitable work or community service work, something his lawyer articulates ad nauseum. Is it ad nausea or nausea? Whatever. You get it. They go on and on about it, but what there is not enough of is Bankman-Fried articulating to a Judge Kaplan why he will never return to another courtroom, like R. Kelly, like Grossman, like Elizabeth Holmes, and like so many others. You have this inside information. You chose not to do anything with it. Indeed, or instead, you are outsourcing all of this work to your lawyers who are paid to allocute and talk about why you are worthy of leniency. Judges discounted because they're paid to say it. Never forget, a very cynical judge once said to me, if he's a bad husband, the lawyer's paid to say he's a good husband. If he had bad intentions, the lawyer's paid to say that he did not have bad intentions. Another judge in Texas said to me, if it's not documented, if I don't see growth, it didn't happen. What I don't see in this messaging from Bankman-Fried's lawyers is what he is doing to demonstrate what he has learned while he's in custody, to prove to Judge Kaplan why he will never return. That's the reason that people get mitigated sentencings. Additionally, as you would expect, his father, Joseph Bankman, alluded to these mental health issues in a letter. Indeed, most parents would do that, though I will tell you letters from family tend to be discounted. Elizabeth Holmes had this issue as well, where you had letters that didn't really speak to her character. Instead, they began to tell the judge what to do. It's a mistake, in my humble, honest opinion, for his father to tell the judge nothing he has done can justify putting him at this risk. Don't tell the judge what to do. Don't do that. If you're going to write a character reference letter, it's very simple. Share a story that demonstrates something good they've done to impact the life of somebody else. As Judge Bennett told my business partner, Michael Santos, in a video, Michael served 26 years in prison, interviewed Judge on YouTube. Judge Bennett said, I don't care if it's a plumber, gardener, electrician. I don't need powerful people, only someone that could speak to their character. So I would argue his father missed the mark by telling the judge that prison would be a bad environment for him due to social cues. Should have thought about that before he engaged in this ruse or doubled down and make bad decisions and was taken into custody. He lost leverage by his post-defense conduct, which was tragic. Any leverage he had with this judge, bye-bye, which is partly why his lawyer's asking for 63 to 78 months is quasi-offensive, because he hasn't earned it. We don't get anything in life, anything without earning it, without documenting it, without memorializing it, showing the struggle, the pain, the but you're doing it anyway. Getting creative through crisis and owning it and not blaming and excusing. You don't outsource Bankman-Fried or Elizabeth Holmes or R. Kelly to get the shortest sentence. You do the work, and nothing in here shows that you did the work. And because of it, us taxpayers are going to warehouse you longer than we need to, and your choices are going to leave you standing for count in prison longer, away from your family, delaying paying back victims and restitution, delaying getting married and having children. And it's more pain and shame for your parents, with whom I empathize because I know it was brutal for my parents to go to prison. You had a chance. You had the inside fastball like me. I tried and swung and missed. You didn't even swing. It's your fault. And once you get there, and say, it's my fault, I knew better, I'll do better, hold me accountable. Others have gotten through this with dignity and a plan. My partner did 26 years in prison, came out strong with money and a career and a network, published author, not by accident. He worked every single day, including on days he didn't want to. I don't see any of the work he did in that detention center in this letter. Did hire an expensive lawyer, though. Did fire the law team that got him convicted, go to somebody else. It's like shifting chairs on the Titanic. It's still going down. Let's wrap this up, people. Let's wrap it up. I'm of the opinion he'll get 15 years or so in federal prison. If he only gets 10, it's because he drew a good draw with the judge, and the judge is going to be somewhat sympathetic to the fact that he's a young man who has health issues and recognizes the guidelines are massive, leading to very long prison terms. And he's somehow perhaps going to show some leniency, but I don't think it's going to be 63 to 78 months in federal prison. Okay, let's talk about his projected release date. I'm presuming he gets sentenced on March 28th and he gets 63 months in prison. His projected release date with the First Step Act, statutory good time, and RDAP would be May 1st, 2026. Let me clarify what this means. The First Step Act is the law that Trump passed in late 2018 that can take up to 1 full year off your sentence. Statutory good time is the 15% you get off of your sentence. You can only lose that if you get into trouble. Indeed, many people do, for iPhones, getting caught in the prison hustle, making bad choices on the inside. So people do lose that 15%. Let's presume he's going to make good choices and keep it. RDAP is the Residential Drug Abuse Program. If he disclosed in his probation report that he had an issue with substance abuse or alcohol in the 12 months preceding his arrest or indictment, then he is eligible to get 1 full year off of his sentence. So I'm factoring all of these things in the potential sentence. Further, I'm giving him, despite my USC psychology degree, back of the envelope in my mind calculations of 231 days he's already served in prison, so just over 7.6 months. On the sentence, he's going to get 288 days of statutory good time. That is the 15% I mentioned. That's equivalent to 9.5 months. The First Step Act that I just mentioned, Trump passed, there's some nuances to it. You get 10 days off your sentence for a while and then 15. For purposes of this exercise, we're going to work under the presumption that he's going to get 270 days off for the First Step Act. Then RDAP, if he completes the Residential Drug Abuse Program, that's 1 full year off of his sentence. Then we're going to factor in at least 6 months in the halfway house. It could be a year. The law allows a year. And then you can see total months owed to the Federal Bureau of Prisons, 25 months, projected months in a BOP facility, 9 months, because 6 months of that will be on home confinement. So think about that for a moment. While some people are expecting 10, 20, 30 years in federal prison, if he got 63 months, which is what the government wants, look at the reductions that exist because of laws and programs. 1 year for the drug program, 15% off or 9.5 months or so for good time, and 270 days for the First Step Act, taking a sentence that could be very, very long down to 19, 25, 30 months in prison, give or take. It doesn't really matter because it's a very short period of time relative to the rest of his life, which is how I'll close. I would encourage Bankman-Fried, if he gets a gift of 10 years or 9 or 8 or 7 years, to recognize in the totality of his life, it is a really brief period of time. It provides him an opportunity to come home, get married, build a family, and recalibrate and use his story as an asset to both make money inspire some people, I suppose, and educate other people. Indeed, there are myriad people who have traversed the system who have done it successfully. Jordan Belfort, The Wolf of Wall Street, Frank Abagnale from Catch Me If You Can, who mentored me when I came home from prison. And even in my smaller consulting crisis management space, I built a business and sustained a family in this space of helping defendants who plead guilty accept responsibility, do better, and mitigate and prepare for the hardest part, coming home with a sullied reputation. I've said it before. I count on him to succeed at some point. I count on him to emerge stronger and prove worthy of the love and support of his family. But it's not going to happen by outsourcing and relying on paid experts to do the work. At some point, Sam, if his family's watching this, at some point, you're going to have to lead. You're going to have to create. You're going to have to demonstrate how you can emerge better and stronger. And if you can do that, this will not define the rest of your life as it does for so many people. Thank you for joining me in this video and for joining the White Collar Advice community. I'm super grateful to have you here. Goodbye.